Kyogre was originally thought to be fairly mid in Regulation G, but things have been changing. So Kyogre is a Pokemon that has been historically very good in VGC. Being able to come in at max health and just click Water Spout to delete stuff is something that's incredibly powerful. Like 150 base power, 100% accurate move that does spread damage is wild, but pair that with the fact that Kyogre now also gets access to Terra Water, that damage becomes even higher in the rain. It's an absolutely menacing Pokemon. However, everybody thought it was going to be mid, mainly because of threats in the format that really haven't been popping up as much as we thought they were going to. Things like Miraidon, things like Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt still is an issue, but there's a lot of things that were causing issues for the idea that Kyogre was going to be good. But as the format develops and as Regulation G gets closer and closer to its first official competition rather than just the online tournaments, Kyogre has really started to show its worth. In a recent tournament, it's performed very well, getting second place. There's a handful of different tournaments that this actually has been doing fairly well at. Let's look at this Regulation G practice tour with like 358 people playing. Pull up Kyogre here. Yeah, 7-3, 6-3. Like, it's just a very good Pokemon, has a lot of very good partners with it, and has really shown why it's still such a good Pokemon. It's because of the fact, like I said, it's never not going to be good for Kyogre to come in, click Water Spout, and do big damage. Now, there's a handful of different variations of Kyogre running around right now, that being the Choice Scarf variant, that being the Mystic Water variant, and that being the Lefties variant. We're going to talk about each of these a little bit individually. I think the strongest is the Mystic Water set personally. Obviously, the Choice Scarf Water Spout with Terra Water is very, very powerful. However, the Mystic Water set is a bit more consistent and gives you more play into those big threats like Raging Bolt, like Miraidon, like Rillaboom. There's a lot of things that this Pokemon gets around with having that Grass Terra typing. So this is still rocking the Water Spout because if you position it correctly, you can still do very well and get a lot of damage off with your Water Spout, which is very powerful. And you can afford to run a more bulky set, something more along the lines of this will outspeed Calyrex Shadow Rider under Tailwind. So something like this is going to give you a lot of options as far as play goes. You're running Water Spout, Origin Pulse, and Ice Beam. Obviously, Origin Pulse is for the swap once you've already taken some damage and your Water Spout isn't going to be doing as much. Going for Origin Pulse, even though it is 85% accurate, is still very, very powerful if you do land it. So that is something to know. And then Ice Beam gives you good coverage into those Dragon types, into those Grass types that are going to cause so many issues. This is a very powerful combination. And the Pokemon that you're seeing this with the most is going to be things like Tornadus. Whether it be a Hurricane variant, a lot of Hurricane is running around right now on Tornadus, mainly because of the fact that it is single target and there's a lot of Wide Guard in the format. Wide Guard's incredibly solid because of the fact that all of these restricted Pokemon have access to a very powerful spread move. It's just very, very common on a lot of the restricted Pokemons, whether it be Astral Barrage, Glacial Lance, Precipice Blades, Expanding Force, Water Spout, Origin Pulse. There's so much spread damage in the format that Wide Guard is just more valuable than ever. So having the option for Tornadus to actually be able to do something other than click Bleak Wind into a Wide Guard is very valuable. So you're actually seeing a lot of Hurricane. Bleak Wind is still very good. You're still seeing Bleak Wind pop up here and there on different teams, but Hurricane is something you're seeing pop up a fair bit more. Another Pokemon, or a couple Pokemon that you're seeing a lot with Kyogre is going to be those priority spam stoppers, because a big problem for Kyogre is getting hit by those priority attacks such as, you know, Thunderclap or such as Grassy Glide that are going to cause a lot of issues for your Kyogre to get maximum Water Spout damage. So you're seeing things like Serena pop up, and Serena's actually been pretty decent in this format. I'm not gonna lie, you're seeing it with either Citrus Berry or like a Wide Lens, so that way its moves are more accurate, because it does run a lot of inaccurate attacks, that being like Power Whip and Triple Axle. And then you're seeing like Taunt and Helping Hand on this thing as well, because you can Helping Hand the Kyogre, or you can Taunt away Trick Room, things like that. Very powerful Pokemon for stopping the priority with its Queenly Majesty ability. Does the same thing as Armor Tail for Farigiraf, which is the other Pokemon that we're going to talk about that is really popular on Kyogre teams, which is just Farigiraf. It's a very good Pokemon in the format. It is immune to Calyrex Shadow, which is really popular, and it just does the same thing that Serena does by blocking that priority spam from Thunderclaps, from Rillaboom, doing a bunch of stuff for Kyogre while also having access to things like Twin Beam to shut down Mienshao. This always, without any investment, this always KOs Mienshao. So that's very, very powerful in regards to Farigiraf. And then also having that option to have Trick Room is a very powerful combination to allow you to prevent something like a Cali Ice Rider from setting up. it gives you a lot of play. Also, having access to foul play is really solid for, it does a ton of damage into Calyrex Shadow. Believe it or not, it still has a decently high attack stat, allowing foul play to just do a ton of damage if it doesn't terrestrialize into a fairy type, because of the fact that it is 4 times weak to the dark type. So very, very powerful attack into a lot of Pokemon meta, Calyrex Ice included. On top of that, just having a ton of really fun stuff. This can also run Helping Hand, it can run Protect. So these are 2 staples that you're seeing on a lot of Kyogre teams. Kyogre teams feel a little bit choreographed. You kind of know what to expect from Kyogre teams, because of the fact that you are trying to get that water spout off in most cases, because it just does so much damage. Now, another Pokemon that is actually seeing a lot of decent play with Kyogre is Archaludon. Makes a lot of sense. I'm seeing both Stamina as well as Stalwart. Stalwart's really useful because of the fact that you can just power through certain Pokemon. For example, Calyrex Ice Rider is very, very commonly running something to the effect of Terra Water or Terra Grass that is going to be able to take the hit more effectively. So if it's Terra Water and you're able to go for a max damage Water Spout while also going for an Electro Shot into that slot while ignoring the Follow Me with Stalwart, it's a very powerful combination that can just do a massive amount of damage into that Calyrex Ice and be able to shut down the Trick Room setup. So that's a very powerful duo. So I think that Stalwart is actually going to see a decent amount of play as far as Archaludon is concerned, but you are still seeing the stamina stuff because it's very good in this format. There's a lot of strong physical attackers in the format, so having access to a Pokemon that whenever it takes damage is going to get that defensive buff is very powerful. You're typically seeing like Draco Meteor, Electro Shot, Flash Cannon, or Snarl, and Body Press. If you're seeing more of a Stalwart variant, you are just going to drop Body Press for Snarl, and this is just a really solid Pokemon for dealing with a lot of threats in the format. Now, as far as Scarf Kyogre is concerned, very good, very solid, being able to just click max damage Water Spout as quickly as possible in a battle. Again, locking into a Water Spout if you are going to take damage that turn, if you're not taking a double KO, is a bit scary. That is something you have to be aware of using this particular variant. It's just something you have to worry about. It's a little bit finicky, so you have to be good with your positioning and be very careful about how you're playing this. I do like the Thunderbolt or Thunder option. Personally, I prefer Thunderbolt because if they decide to swap the weather on you, if they're running like Koraidon or something, and you can go for a Thunderbolt into the opposing slot that is going to take super effective damage, it's very beneficial for Thunderbolt over Thunder, because you don't have to worry about that accuracy check with Thunder if they change the weather on you. So that is definitely something to be keeping your eye on as far as that 4th move slot go. I've seen Thunder, I've seen Hydro Pump, I've seen a bunch of stuff out of Kyogre in that regard. So I think that Thunderbolt for me personally has felt the most consistent with this particular item in this particular build. You are running just a ton of speed on this thing. You're trying to outspeed as much stuff as possible in the format. Again, still running this next to Tornado, so you can outspeed even more stuff under Tailwind. Just a really solid option with Kyogre. Finally, this is a kind of variant set, similar to how a lot of people are playing Terapagos right now. This runs running Leftovers with Calm Mind. Being able to set Calm Mind and go for Origin Pulse is really cool. It's very powerful, very strong, and honestly I think a really niche pick, maybe just for ladder, not necessarily for like tournament play, that could be really cool with a Origin Pulse Calm Mind Kyogre could be something like Hydrapple. Being able to rotate in Hydrapple and go for that evasiveness drop, allowing Kyogre to hit more Origin Pulses after it gets a Calm Mind or 2 up, is really cool. So I think that something like this on ladder, I don't necessarily think this has a lot of tournament play, but I definitely think that something like this on ladder could be really cool and catch a lot of people off guard, which is really powerful for Kyogre. Giving it access to that more accurate Origin Pulse after you get a Calm Mind up in the rain is going to do an astronomical amount of damage. Now, there are issues with Kyogre. The weather wars are raging right now, mainly because Koraidon is actually being very solid into the Kyogre matchup. And I think Koraidon has a lot of potential to be, in the double restricted format, one of the best Pokemon. I think that right now it is a touch limited, but it's still very good. Don't get that twisted. I've slandered Koraidon a lot in Regulation G, but I think Koraidon is actually a really good Pokemon. But I think that once you have access to a double restricted format, that Koraidon gets even better, and I kind of want to make a separate video talking about this entirely. But Koraidon being able to switch in on that Kyogre and be able to resist the water type damage in the sun is so powerful for dealing with Kyogre threats. So this is a Pokemon you're seeing pop up a fair bit. Obviously, Raging Bolt is an issue. being able to hit it with strong electric type attacks and being able to resist the damage that Kyogre puts out is very powerful. So Raging Bolt's a solid option. Like I mentioned earlier, Rillaboom is incredibly solid playing into Kyogre because of the fact that you can Grassy Glide if you get rid of that prevention in the form of Serena or in the form of Farigiraf. Getting rid of that Pokemon and then allowing Rillaboom to just kind of do Rillaboom stuff into Kyogre is very, very powerful for dealing with that particular threat. And then I mentioned Miraidon earlier, and Miraidon, while it isn't seeing a ton of play, it's picking up a little bit. People are starting to realize how to team build with this thing, and it's not going for Quark Drive spam. It's just building a nice balance team around this very powerful Pokemon, and I think that's like a best case scenario. I think Miraidon, much like Koraidon, is going to be even better in a double restricted format, but this will pop up a fair bit at tourney play, so you do need to be aware of this threat. It does resist the water type damage from Kyogre. It does do super effective damage to Kyogre if you don't Terra Grass it. It's just a very good Pokemon into that matchup. And the final one is Ogerpon Wellspring. This Pokemon causes issues just because of the fact that especially if you're running the Scarf variant, you're just going to be healing up Ogerpon at the start of every turn, no matter how much damage you do to it. So that is something you definitely have to be aware of, is the fact that Ogerpon is just going to be able to kind of eat hits from Kyogre left, right, and center. So that is definitely something you have to keep your eye on with this particular Pokemon. But all in all, I think Kyogre is definitely an A tier restricted Pokemon in the format right now. As things develop, that can definitely change as time goes on, but as it sits right now, Kyogre is just incredibly powerful. Another Pokemon that really benefits the existence of Kyogre in the format, because you don't have to rely so much on Kyogre or Tornadus to set rain. Pelipper is very good right now. Pelipper is a very strong Pokemon in the format, mainly because of the fact that it gets Wide Guard. Also has a lot of options as far as going for Weather Ball damage, going for Hurricanes, 100% accurate in the rain, going for Tailwind. There's a lot of tools that Pelipper has and does a lot of damage in its own right. So Pelipper is just super, super good. But being able to rely on Pelipper to set the rain for you really, really helps. So I think that really helps the existence of Kyogre. Even though the fact that this has Wide Guard and can block a lot of Kyogre's attacks, I think that Pelipper kind of sort of benefits Kyogre in a weird way. If you deal with the Pelipper, you just have rain, and it's so nice. And it also benefits the teammates of Kyogre. Looking specifically at Archaludon, looking at Tornadus, there's a lot of things that Pelipper does for a Kyogre team that just helps it out without necessarily having to have Kyogre on the field. So I think for that reason, Kyogre's in a really good place right now. And as people figure out Koraidon and as people get better at the Weather War, Kyogre I could definitely see falling off a bit. But as it sits right now, this is just a really powerful Pokemon. So those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, sub if you're not already. And check out the Discord if you want to share Reg G teams that could be featured in future videos on the channel. But until next time, peace.